Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all coming in. I hope you're doing well today. I'm in a different mystery room again today for internet connection reasons. So please let me know if the sound's okay. There's not a huge amount I can do, but let me just know if it's sounding relatively clear to you. And yeah, my name is Milla, and I'm holding the space here for this week of daily meditations. And I'm sharing on the themes of the breath, the body, and connection, and how those can be part of our practice and how that practice can inform other aspects of our lives in the context of Buddhist ideas, the Dharma. And so this is in some ways a really simple kind of back to basics in some ways approach. Thank you for the feedback on the sound. That's really helpful. So in some ways it's a very kind of deceptively simple approach, but it also allows a lot of things to unfurl. And for me, it's very foundational, thinking about breath, body, and connection. So as with everything I offer, it's in the spirit of invitation. Please feel free to take up as much or as little as I suggest, whatever is useful to you. And also I'm offering in the spirit of experimentation and reflection, so that perhaps we try things out, see how they land in our practice, in our lives, and use discernment to kind of choose whether we take them forwards or whether we then drop them again. So I'll speak a little bit, and then I'll share a guided practice and leave some time for silent practice together. And after that, we'll have time for questions and shared reflections over the chat. And I really encourage you to share any reflections you have on your practice in the chat, whether that's something you noticed or something that felt challenging or something that felt confusing. Because speaking with other people who meditate about the practice itself, in some ways the technical or the pragmatic aspect of it, I have found at different points just so useful. So I really encourage you to do that if it feels good. So I'm here for you and for your practice and for this community. But it's your practice that matters the most. All right. So today I'm picking the body mostly as the theme, and particularly how steady embodied awareness can be part of our practice. The awareness that's of the body in the body, the kind of vibrant moment to moment contact with our physical experience, and how creating or developing or training ourselves to have access to a steady embodied can be like a is about you can use, in the sit today and in maybe the rest of your day. So the book a great deal of emphasis on body-centered practices, and in many of the important Pali suttas, a sutta means discourse or teaching. It's how a lot of, all of the Buddha's teachings pretty much have come down in this written form. And Pali is the written language that's closest to the language that the Buddha spoke. So Pali Sutta means a kind of a discourse from the Buddha at that time or near that time. And in many of these suttas, which underpin much contemporary Vipassana practice, contemporary insight practice and tradition, contemplation of the body is given great prominence. It's often the first in a list of practices, implying that it's foundational, or it can be treated as central in itself. Lots of reasons why this might be, perhaps because the body is the way we take in information. It's the place we sense and make sense of information, whether that's, from any kind of our sense doors. It's sort of how we have a world. It's how we engage and how we understand the world. Without the body, there would be no experience as we know it, and therefore no world at all. So clarifying and getting close to the ways in which we perceive and make sense of the world, you can see it as sort of polishing your glasses. Sometimes that metaphor is used, polishing a lens, clarifying our perception apparatus. It's one way to develop clear seeing, this refining and exploring the ways we relate to our bodies and our physical experiences, because the way we relate to the world is through our bodies. So when we come to practice, I'll share some body scan practices where we sort of sense in detail into the bodily experience. And these can, much as with the breath, these can be concentration practices, mindfulness practices, also insight practices in themselves. And they can lead us to our, embodied insights around, for instance, anatta, or non-self, the idea of the self as a process rather than a fixed thing. And we've spoken about that a little bit this week so far, if any of you have been here on previous days. So for instance, the body is a kind of living proof in a way of the ways that we are constantly changing and not fixed. We are processes and fundamentally interconnected with all of life. So the breath can connect us with plants. So we swap oxygen and carbon dioxide with one another. That's on a relatively short time scale. So the plant in the room during, while I'm in here, will be breathing in the carbon dioxide I breathe out. And similarly, I might breathe in some oxygen from the plant, and I might make some energy in the mitochondria of my cells. And then the plant is making some energy in the chloroplasts of its cells with the carbon dioxide that I've breathed out and the sunlight that's come from the sun 93 million miles away. Kind of amazing, this reality of our interrelatedness, how it's really, really here. It's not an abstract idea. And again, I think coming back to contemplation of the body can, in a way, confront us with that again and again. Another way to contemplate this interrelatedness is across a longer time scale. So our bodies were made in the bodies of our mothers, the building blocks from her body, with some DNA help from dad, and the same for their parents going back to the beginning of the species and before that. So we shared DNA as well as some literal physical elements possibly with all of those people. So there's this sense of family and ancestry. And there's a lovely idea of the last shared ancestor, because we all kind of evolved from the same, relatively, compared to today, relatively small group of people. It's possible to figure out mathematically when the last shared ancestor was, the kind of great, 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 great grandparent. And there is literally a person that all of us share, if you drew the full family tree. And it's only about 10,000 years ago. So we're all related. Not in a kind of abstract, sentimental, human family way, but literally. Our bodies are this walking library, in some ways a moving museum of all of this shared history. And practice is a way to dive into the lived experience of that miracle. Again, starting with steady embodied attention, which is a skill that goes beyond practice into our wider lives. So we use our bodies to interact with others, with other species, with the earth, to act in the world. So having clear seeing and a refined understanding of what's going on can also help us to interact or to interbe, to interexist with others from a more intelligent, balanced, and ethical place. And steady embodied attention helps us tune into our inner senses and the ways in which we respond in the moment. An essential foundation not only for meditation, but also for relationships. So when you're listening to someone you care about who is having a difficulty, with this steady embodied awareness, you can sense their grief with sensitivity, so you can respond appropriately. If you're tuned in internally, you might notice urges you would have that would be less helpful, like wanting to impose your values onto their challenge or try to fix them, or to judge them or to pity them, all of which are not so helpful if you've ever been on the other end of those things. You can notice if your own grief is being touched and take care of it so that you can remain present to them and not inadvertently start making them take care of you instead. If you're in conflict with someone, or when you're working to disrupt harmful power in the world, you can stay in touch with how that process resonates for you and for others, and nourish yourself in the midst of that challenge without necessarily folding or fleeing, because you understand how to be present with discomfort without losing perspective or dignity, staying in the storm without becoming swamped, and also without checking out and losing contact with your sensitivity and values. So I'm in Cambridge this part of this week for work, and staying in the college. And there's a tree in one of the colleges called Emmanuel, which has extraordinary characteristics. It's a very old and very beautiful, a very enormous oriental plane. So in some ways it looks like the plane trees that you see in London parks or in other European cities, with a kind of patchy bark and lovely kind of multi-pointed leaves. But the thing about this particular tree is that it grows up and then it grows out, and then the branches come down to the ground and then they reroot and grow up again. It is absolutely beautiful. It makes a cathedral, and it has all wildflowers underneath it, and I visited it yesterday. And I feel an enormous amount of kinship with this tree. And when I'm there with steady embodied awareness, I can appreciate this cathedral tree as a beautiful and powerful being, which has done so much in its life, but also as a sibling and also as a friend. I can feel my interrelatedness, our shared nature, the tree's nature in me and my nature in the tree, and the living nature that is the same for both of us. You may have had similar experiences with trees or with other beings. So I see this factor, steady embodied awareness, like a kind of multi-use tool, like a Swiss Army knife of resilience and power. It enables sensitivity and intimacy as well as strength. It can enable the creation and holding of useful boundaries, the wisdom to respond rather than to react. Could go on. But for the moment, let's practice together to develop this wonderful quality, steady embodied awareness. So feel free to start setting up for your practice. I'm going to lead a couple of body scans, and one will be fairly swift and one will be slow. So however you're going to be for your practice, whether you're sitting, standing, lying, maybe you're moving, that's all welcome. So let's settle in together. Okay. So feel free to take a few, maybe deeper than usual breaths or a couple of sighs. Make any movements you'd like to make. And starting with gratitude for this practice of liberation. The people who've developed and shared it, the Buddha, the Buddha's teachers, and others. Stretching back in time and forward in time too. And all their supporters, peers and friends, the people whose work and generosity enabled teaching and practice to flourish and survive. Gratitude for your teachers who've helped to inspire or support or guide you, whose practice has made a path that you can walk on now. And gratitude to all those whose work and commitment has made your practice possible through their individual support or through the social and economic structures that support our lives and give us the ability to carve out time for meditation. Which is not possible for everybody. So thanking all enablers and supporters of our practice, seen and unseen, known and unknown, willing and unwilling, acknowledged and unacknowledged. Settling in to our physical experience. Perhaps starting to soften any areas of tension or bracing. Commonly felt in the stomach or the chest, shoulders or the neck, and sometimes the face. Just noticing and inviting a little bit more softness, 5% more softness, any areas that might be tense or braced. So now I'll guide some body scans. First of all, the swift one. This is a meditation practice where you sweep your awareness or consciousness through your physical experience. And the first one I'll invite starts at the feet. I invite you to sweep your awareness through your body from feet to crown of your head in one in-breath. Taking it all in as if you were a human scanner. Then on the out-breath, resting your attention on the whole field of your embodied experience. So in-breath sweeping up, and out-breath spaciously holding the whole body experience. We'll do that for a little while. In-breath sweeping up, out-breath resting spaciously. And feel free to take a break. This can be not for everybody, but it can be quite enlivening, maybe in a way that feels unfamiliar. Feel free to take a break and do 2 or 3 breaths like that and then come back at any time. And then if you like, letting that practice be and returning to steady embodied awareness, perhaps where your body is meeting the ground, or perhaps your breath for a few minutes. Noticing what's happening for you, for your bodily experience, right now, right here. And now I'll give some guidance for a longer body scan. And just a note that body scans don't work for everybody. They're not easy for everybody. And if any part of this feels less useful than it is useful for you, then my suggestion would be to choose a practice that you know that works for you and do that instead. So I just wanted to name that before I start this guidance. So if you'd like to participate, we'll start at the top of the head. So bringing your conscious awareness, the focus of your attention to the top of your head. Noticing any sensations or lack of sensations. Being present with the experience of the top of your head. Moving round to the sides and the back of your head. Exploring with contact and curiosity and care. What's going on? Almost like you were going around a building where you live and checking in with your neighbors, just saying hi. How are things? And pausing to see what comes back. And now moving to your face, forehead, eyes, cheeks and mouth. Allowing everything to be witnessed, to be seen with caring, gentle, embodied attention. Moving to your throat, and your neck, and not forgetting the insides of your neck and the insides of your head. Resting your attention on the physical experience of the inside of your head and neck. Whether it's a positive, a negative, or a neutral sensation, holding it with spacious care. And then moving on to your right shoulder. Inside and out. The top of your right arm. Exploring with patience and curiosity. Your right elbow. Your right forearm. Soaking your attention into your experience. Your right wrist. And then we'll take some time with the right hand at your own pace, having a good look around here, accompanying every part of your hand in its experience right now. And then jumping across to your left hand, taking your time to check in and really be with every part of your left hand. Your left wrist, forearm, elbow, the upper part of your left arm, inside and out, and your left shoulder. Noticing what's happening. And if there's anything that you need in terms of movement or breath or anything else to support your practice, feel free. So we'll continue down the back, moving down your spine and the upper part of your back. Mid-back, all the muscles, the bones, the fascia, the skin, lower back, and then your sides, moving your awareness up the sides of your body, one at a time, or go for a double. And then coming to your chest, outside and inside, your wonderful heart and lungs, and the inside front of your spine, all of the muscles and tendons, the bones, your rib cage, and down into your stomach. Your lovely soft stomach, and everything that's in it, everything in there. And then your hips. And your groin. And your seat, your bum. And then moving down your right leg. Hip flexor and thigh muscle. Hamstring and the great big femur bone. And your knee. Your calf muscle, and your shin, outside and in. Your ankle. And the top of your foot. The sole of your foot. And inside, all the bones and muscles, tendons and nerves. And each of your toes. Bringing your attention, your inquiry, your deep curiosity to the experience right now. What is happening? What is happening in your left foot? Your left toes. Spending some time with the left foot. Moving to the left ankle. Left shin and calf muscle. Your left knee. And your left thigh, outside and in. And then returning to your low stomach. And if it's possible, sensing in to what's present in your low stomach. And if there's any warmth, or any kindness or any joy that might be present there, sensing into it. Maybe it's in your heart or chest. If it's present, sensing into it, allowing it to grow and spread and suffuse your experience. from the top of your head to the tip of your nose to your fingers and toes. As we sit quietly together for the rest of the meditation. So now, coming back together, moving from your formal meditation practice of steady embodied awareness to a more informal, I suppose, collective moment of steady embodied awareness. Staying in touch with that, perhaps, for the rest of the session. And I wonder how things are, how things were in the practice, or if you tried any experiments yesterday. Feel free to put any reflections on these in the chat for me and for everybody else. Also, any questions you may have. And I'm inviting this, as I said at the beginning, to encourage everyone to keep getting to know each other and supporting each other, whether you're new or you've been here for a while. Yeah, feel free to share. I also invite you to pick an element of the practice today, perhaps the swifter body scan to do when you're making tea or just at any moment in the day that you remember. Or maybe there's an insight or a way of working with your practice today that felt important. Maybe there's ways that you can drop that into the rest of your day. And we can share tomorrow, or you could use the community bit of the Sangha Live platform. And as ever, to mention dana. As you probably know, the platform runs on generosity. So the money that you share helps Sangha Live to stay sustainable, and this week it will help me to stay sustainable, which is about my living costs and so on, but also about my work. So I work with people making change in the world, and I'm going to use my dana this week to support some of that work. One group organizing to disrupt harmful power around oil money and corruption in politics. So I'm exposing this. And the other working to support activists and people organizing to disrupt harmful power through creating moments of nourishment and liberation and joy through kind of collective care activities. That doesn't sound too abstract. And the first is called Stop Polluting Politics, and the second is called CAN. And there's not much online activity for either of them yet because it's all kind of getting going, but that's where your dana will go for me this week. So please feel free to give generously and be part of that. So I'm really happy to see any reflections or any questions. And yeah. And if not, then extra bonus quiet meditation time. Body scans do mean less quiet time, and I'm really aware of that. But I think it can be useful for some people to share sometimes. The rest of the week, though, I will not be talking so much. Yes, Megan, she asks, any one-to-one sessions? Yes, I do. Very open to that. Let me see. I'll just put the website in. You can contact me. That's part. Some of my work is there. Yeah, body scans can be so relaxing. Even though I was guiding that, I also found myself relaxing as I moved through. And the short ones can be really, really energizing. That particular one, the single breath one, it's a kind of a version of something a teacher called Fleet Mall teaches. He has done a lot of work in prisons. And so in some ways it's a relatively quick or easy in, but I think it's also a really powerful practice. It's a good one to use during the day. And it's interesting how going up can be energizing, but then coming down can be soothing. So moments of anxiety or tension or fear, sometimes just going, well, where are my feet? What's going on there? Can be literally grounding. It's surprising how simple it is sometimes. And then also the energizing feeling can come from the swift upwards body scan. Claire says, by the end, I had an awareness of being an energy body with very diffuse boundaries. Okay. Yeah. Diffuse boundaries is definitely part of anatta, of non-self, and a great example of how embodied practice and insight are very interwoven sometimes. Thank you, Anthea. Yeah, lying down. I would love to do a meditation, to lead a session, one of these sessions lying down, to kind of give more permission for that. It does become quite difficult with also doing the controls on the computer. But I would like to do that at some point. Okay, Tim asks, a slight paradox with the imaginative and intellectual exercise, yes, of picturing and isolating body parts and the business of acceptance and allowance. A sense of switching between feeling and imagining. Do I have a sense of switching between feeling and imagining? Yes. Language is a kind of imperfect gateway into practice. And it would be possible for sure to lead a body scan without really talking much and without doing much of the imagining and the describing. And probably if you're practicing on your own, that would be a really good choice, because then you're less going into the imaginative and the intellectual of picturing and isolating, and I completely understand. So yeah, I would say feeling where you can as much as possible, and imagining as a gateway or a refocusing tool or like a glue to bring awareness, not a glue, kind of like a way to bring awareness and experience together again. Yeah, as much as possible, the feeling and not the words. But it's pretty hard to lead meditation without any words, at least not in this environment. But yeah, absolutely a paradox. And actually, that's the paradox of practice, of all of these kinds of practices, is that the language is better than nothing, but very, very imperfect for pointing to what we're doing. Yeah, Catherine similarly groping to find the language. Yeah. Resting awareness in the body. Interesting. Yes, soaking. There's a lot of metaphors of kind of soaking into like water and liquids mixing and things soaking or suffusing in the tradition. An attempt to get to this idea of this kind of paradox of awareness and experience being like actually the same thing, even though we have these different words for them. And Hilary says, I'm in pretty constant physical pain with a frozen shoulder. I'm sorry about that. Practice very challenging, understandable. Help to maintain embodied awareness and access some relaxation and joy. Okay, I'm really glad. I'm really glad. Your pain is very, very difficult. So we're coming to the end of the time now. I'm going to sit here. And if any other questions come, then, feel free. Otherwise, I again invite you to pick an aspect of something that happened today in your practice and drop it into your day at different times and just see how that is. So wishing you a wonderful day. See you tomorrow, perhaps.